Is up, everybody? My name is James DeFiore, and this is Black Bolt. I've been wearing a new hat lately, not physically, but metaphorically, as a media critic. And I'm obviously not the first one. We have a few in Canada. I guess Jesse Brown is the one that normally people think of. But there's good reason. Since newspapers died and everything became online, and then social media took over and it became about clicks, we've seen a transformation, especially among legacy outlets, where they end up resorting to tactics they probably wouldn't have when print media was still strong. And we, as a person who went to journalism school, we would look up to certain mainstay papers. The Hamilton Spectator was actually one of the main examples of ethical reporting in Canada. But there was also the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail. If you can remember a pre-internet, a pre-digital world, these were basically the standard bearers of what ethical journalism looked like. In journalism, and specifically investigative reporting, there's often a latitude afforded to journalists who deceive sometimes unsuspecting members of the public in order to get the scoop, or at the very least, enhance the reporting that's already been done. Now, most of the time, these deceptions are directed towards the actual target of the investigation rather than innocent civilians who touch the edges of whatever story is being investigated. Personally, I'm no stranger to this gray area in investigative reporting. And actually, the example I'm about to give you was admonished and criticized heavily by none other than the late Christy Blatchford herself. Rest in peace, Christy, by the way. Blatchford was my neighbor for nearly a decade in the Toronto's Annex neighborhood, and I told her about the story that I had done where I voted 3 times in the 2004 federal election. Now, I mistakenly called it an investigative report, and she snapped at me. She's like, "That was a stunt, James, and you know it." Now, it was a good stunt, but it was not an investigative report, and she was right. An investigative report requires several aspects in order to be considered investigative. This would include extensive research in whatever story you're pursuing, and sometimes can even include clandestine reporting, so long as those clandestine activities are in the public interest and do not victimize like innocent third parties. Ethics in journalism can often seem murky, and a lot of people, like cops, don't like journalists. Athletes don't like journalists a lot of the times. But there are various ways to separate the professional and ethical journalists from their cheap tabloid counterparts. Tabloid journalists do not adhere to standards of any kind, usually. If they're trying to dig dirt up on some celebrity, they don't really have any issue trying to infiltrate the inner circle of that celebrity under false pretenses. They could even hack the celebrity's phone or impersonate someone in order to glean information that they seek. They're considered ethical conundrums to many actual journalists, but no tabloid reporter really has any problem doing that because that's par for the course. That's literally the business that they're in. So what happens when reporters from legacy media outlets borrow tactics from their tabloid cousins? What happens when a mainstream reporter chooses clandestine methods in order to expand the scope or the weight of their story? And most of all, how egregious is it for allegedly above the board reporters to hoodwink innocent people in order to obtain information that helps them shine a spotlight on an allegedly corrupt third party or the real subject of their report? Now, to people like me, and I think most viewers and listeners, the answers should be obvious. Those reporters, when utilizing those tactics, they run the risk, I guess I would say, of becoming a bigger story than whatever it is that they're working on. Now, there are some exceptions where the ends justify the means. If you're doing like a terrorism-related story or an organized crime story or a story about serial killers or rapists, you can use clandestine methods when trying to uncover those types of crimes, but the reporters involved in those cases still have to succeed in their ruses. Otherwise, all they did was create additional victims. And just to further punctuate my earlier point, usually these deceptive tactics are directed towards the subject of the story, not innocent people in like the universe that subject happens to reside in. So we're talking like friends and coworkers and things like that. Now, all of this leads me to the following. I've recently uncovered what I consider to be irrefutable evidence that suggests the Globe and Mail engaged in unethical and potentially illegal behavior when they sent a seasoned reporter, Mark McKinnon, to Lebanon in order to dig up dirt on MHCare Medical CEO Sam Reich. On the surface, the report on the surface, what I just described sounds benign. Like a reporter going and asking questions of people that know Sam, that just seems to be, par for the course in lieu of their existing report that mostly is being done by Carrie Tate at the Globe and Mail. Now, the story of MHCare Medical is that there's been allegations thrown at Sam Maraish saying that he's gotten sweetheart deals with the government, that allegedly some of the things that he had ordered, especially during COVID, didn't meet standards. And the jury is still sort of out on that. He's not being charged with any criminal activities or anything like that. And there's a story about complimentary hockey tickets, although we have discovered that it wasn't Sam that was trying to peddle his tickets to win favor. It was actually coming from the other way. He was being bombarded with requests. But what we're finding out with this MHCare Medical Story is that there appears to be like an effort to basically take the good things about Sam Maraish and shield the public from those things, and then the bad things about people like Athena Mentzelopoulos with her shady history and not including that in the reporting. So it's just very slanted. Now, McKinnon wasn't even on the MHCare Medical Story, so I'm assuming that he was sent there because he's based in London, and it was probably cheaper to send him than it would be to send Carrie Tate, who, as I said, was doing most of the reporting. But what's more kind of concerning is how McKinnon went about his investigation. So today on the show, we'll be speaking with a man who was interviewed by the Globe and Mail, and he will share with us the allegedly fraudulent tactics that the Globe and Mail used, not only on him, but other people in the village of Jubjanine, which is where I guess Sam Maraish has friends and family. So here to join us is his name is Nadim Haidar, and once again, he was interviewed by Mark McKinnon from the Globe and Mail. Nadim, how are you, buddy?
Good morning. Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. Thank you. So listen, let's try to be as clear as we can for listeners and sort of start at the beginning. You were not the first person that Mark McKinnon from the Globe and Mail interviewed. That was a gentleman by the name of Ahmed. Can you start there? Because I think that that's really kind of the crux of this story. So let us know, exactly what happened. And by the way, just to my audience, we are going to be speaking with Ahmad possibly next week. So we're gonna see if we can have him on the show. But just give us your take on how the Globe approached this and what they did at the beginning.
So on May 21st, I got a call from Ahmed Ajram, who runs a Facebook page called Jubjanine Online, and he said, "We have a newspaper from Canada. Their name is Globe and Mail, and they want to come and talk about the elections. At that time we had just completed the municipal election in Jubjanine, and the municipality and what have occurred, and we want to get to know the people of Jubjanine." That's what Ahmed told me. I said, "Great, that's very good." So the hope from that was that we could potentially talk to them and highlight the needs of the Jubjanine, of our town, and what's happening, and where we can actually get more assistance to improve the local and the lifestyle and the economy, etc., etc. That was the impression I had. And then they came over, and the conversation shifted into Sam Maraish, and we can speak about that in a bit if you like. But that's how it started.
And wasn't there also almost like now I don't know if this was conversational, but didn't Mark McKinnon from the Globe and Mail make it seem like there was some sort of help that could be done for Jubjanine as a community? There was something about clean water or something. Yeah, go ahead.
During the conversation that we had, which I felt I was being forced into it. Some people came into my house. They're foreigners, with a local person who is an active person in the community who helps people, Ahmed. As the conversation started, like I said, I was confused. Like, why is it that we're talking about Sam now? I was under the impression that we're not. That this is about Jubjanine, not about what Globe and Mail is doing. And my first comment to to Mark was that I understand that you are being sued by somebody in Alberta. So my alert came on as, okay, these guys are, they told us something, but what they're actually doing is something different. Now, through the conversation, we did speak about the needs of Jib Janine, the waterways, the rivers, the waste management, the uh, overall economy. It's, yes, we did. Now, we did speak about things that the Globe and Mail and other Canadian probably uh, charitable organizations would help us. Yes, that did come up, but again, that was not the focus.
Yeah, but it just seems odd to me. So I'm just to where my listen. I've been called many things, and journalist is one of them. I don't know if I consider myself a journalist anymore, but I am. I have been in that field for about 25 years as a freelancer, as a reporter for various publications, and a columnist and all that. But what he's doing, if I'm reading the situation correctly, first of all, it was completely pointless. But second of all, what he's doing is trying to soften up the people that he's about to interview by placating them. It's something that reporters have learned to do, usually in investigative reports. But what makes this situation peculiar is that it was completely unnecessary for him to do that. Like, I mean, if they feel like they have an honest to God story, they could go to Jub Janine in Lebanon and talk to people like yourself and just be like, hey, do you have a couple minutes? I'd like to talk to you about Sam Maresh, who is under a cloud of suspicion in Alberta, Canada, for some of his business dealings. That's all they would have had to do. Now, would you have talked to them? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm wondering how it makes you feel to know that they actually, went to such lengths to sort of gain your trust and kind of do it under false pretenses. Like, how did you feel about it when the interview was over?
I through the interview, when he made it clear as to why he was here, I paused for about 30 seconds, and I like, why did you not tell me that initially? I feel like I felt at that moment, I felt that I was betrayed, because in our culture, in our Arabic slash Lebanese culture, more of a Lebanese culture, that uh, guests are more important than the household people. Guests are more important than the people that live in the house, than the occupants. And now you're sitting in my house, and now you're given my culture. You've actually, you're forcing me rather than you've been honest with me. I would have preferred had they been honest, and if they'd been honest as well, I would have spoken with them regardless. In all honesty, uh, but yes, I felt that I was used.
Yeah, and Ahmed felt the same way. Speak a little bit about who Ahmed is, because from my understanding, with this in discussions with you, he's kind of one of those. I don't know if you want to call him a community leader, but at least like one of those guys. He's got so much pride in where he comes from.
So
He's like the salt of the earth, good Samaritan kind of guy. And this is what a lot of people, including yourself, I believe, and I think Ahmed would say the same thing. You've talked to him about feeling taken advantage of, where you're pressing the right pressure points in his like soft heartedness. Like he's got pride in his community, so the reporter opens with things that will display that pride or compliment his community, so that he becomes a willing participant to the interview. And then
I
that
was.
hard pivot to trying to find dirt on someone who he knows. It just listen, and this isn't like a PR campaign for Sam. I am really just trying to figure out why this story. What first of all, the fact that they sent a reporter all the way to Lebanon when the story is involving contracts in the province of Alberta inside Canada just seems odd to me. What did you think? What did first of all? Let's start with Ahmed, and I'll come back to my second question. But tell me a little bit about him and why it seemed especially kind of egregious that the way they treated him.
Given the way they came in, they couldn't have found a better person than Ahmed, with his soft heart, with his uh, with the history of of and will to serve his community. And of course, he serves, and he does what he does through help from outside. Of course, this is just a man that has no business. That he has an organization through the UN, and he actually does what he does to help people. So he's got medical equipment that he gives to sick people for free, uh, whether it's a cane or a bed or an uh, oxygen bottle, etc. They couldn't have found a better person to actually convince that, yeah, we're coming in to see what we can do for Jib Janine and the municipality of Jib Janine. Uh, Whether he was a target or not, I do not know. Now, of course, he's online. He runs a Facebook page where he advertises all events, good, bad, newborns, weddings, engagements, deaths. During deaths, he builds a tent in front of the house of the people with the death, puts chairs for people that come in for uh, uh, for the event. He serves. He brings in food and coffee, etc. Uh, so, in summary, Ahmed is basically someone who everyone knows, and himself. He also does something for the children of Jib Janine. He runs a soccer club, an organized soccer club, to take children away from screens and from homes and from iPads and iPods, etc., to the real world. So all in all, Ahmed was their perfect target, because he is the one that wants to help, and he's now assuming, okay, so there's a Canadian newspaper, and those are his words after me and him, after Globe and Mail left that day on May 21st. He said, I these people did not tell me they were going to talk about Sam. These people told me one, two, three. They're talking about the town, what the town needs, etc., etc. I said to him during that conversation, I said, I wish I had videotaped your face when the name of Sam Reich came and your eyebrows, but I didn't. The look on Ahmed's face when Sam's name came up, when Mickey's name came up, etc., and the town's Leila Jibjanine and the relationship to Canada and how did we end up in Canada, etc. Ahmed, and then also when the conversation got deeper as to how do people get help? How does the money come to Jibjanine? Ahmed's eyes open up and like, are these people trying to bring us help or stop help from us? So
Yeah.
now you compare that to the initial approach that they approached him. Now we're talking black and white, and this is on all honesty.
So, like if I'm working for the Globe and Mail and I'm working on that particular story, first of all, there's been so many things that are odd about this story. Now, I'm not, saying anything is true or false in some of the other reporting that the Globe has done on this story. Government contracts and the reliability of the equipment that came in. They've reported what they've reported. What I don't really understand though is the lengths that certain people have gone to. Like my colleague David Wallace was approached by a private detective that I will, or sorry, private investigator that I will not name on the air, and he was basically tasked. David was tasked to go and find if there were any criminal associations between Sam Marash and criminal organizations in Canada. And then David was like, okay, because David had no idea who Sam Marash was, and so he did conduct an investigation, and there were no connections. So, but that type of like fishing expedition, it's not just the Globe and Mail, although they did what they did in Lebanon, and I find that just very cheap and tabloidish. But like. Sam seems to be a target, and I can't kind of figure out why a legacy media outlet like Globe and Mail would sort of resort to these tactics. Like, their star witness, Athena Mentzelopoulos, has a horrible track record of sweetheart deals and golden parachutes, and she's a lobbyist, and you know what I mean. And she falsely said that the RCMP were investigating several members of I believe it was the BC Health Board. And a bunch of people got fired, and it turned out not to be true. And she's their star witness. But when you see the reporting that mentions her name, they don't ever talk about that. And so you have that. You have the private investigator, and then this weird trip to Lebanon where they butter up locals by talking about how the community, the improvements that they could get and how do they get help. And then that hard pivot into questions about Sam. What kind of questions were they asking you about Sam Maresh?
You know, through the conversation that we had, that I had with them, there was some questions that I questioned myself. Why are they asking them? Such as, why would how so I told them that Sam lived here in this neighborhood with us when we were growing up. We grew up together here. I think he lived 5 to 6 years, and he was a child. And and they saw the neighborhood. It's a poor neighborhood. It's average.
Yeah, I
And
looked it
then,
up. It's something like the average income for a person that lives in Jub Janine is about
yeah,
$120 a month or so.
yeah. So
Yeah.
asking about what did his parents do before they left? What did you guys do? How did you survive? So it was all basic average lifestyle, with cows and donkeys and horses and farming and stuff like that. And the next question that came was, was Sam's dad in the army? And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Uh, I the answer was, as far as I know, no, he was not. But how is that relevant? And then the next question would be around, how do you think Sam made it to this level to this level in his life, growing up in this poor neighborhood. And my deep inside thought was like, we should be celebrating this guy. We should not be doing what you're doing. You should celebrate people that come from poor background, and they make it in life. You don't actually go and attack them. And that put a big question mark on Mark when I was talking to him. Of course, Mark is probably someone that is being told what to do by someone higher. But again, as far as I'm concerned, you should celebrate someone that has made it in life. You do not go and break their legs. Other questions around properties, around what does he own? Does he have businesses? This and that. And again, I told him, look, Sam Reich's family house is here. He's like my house, average. You can go see it. And in Jibjanin, if you go buy a chicken, everyone knows about it. So I'm serious. Everyone, oh, so and so bought the chicken, and if and you're asking me, what does Sam Reich have in Jibjanin? Sam Reich does, as far as I know, I haven't heard that he bought anything or built a castle or built on the contrary. And this is where Ahmed Ajram came, and he said, look, Sam Reich helps people put food on their table in Jibjanin. That's what he does. That's what he's done for Jibjanin. He helped people put food for their children on the table. Now, the conversation continues on where they were asking about how does money get transferred. And the question to me, how do you bring money? I said, look, I put $500 in my pocket and I come home. I spend them and I go back home. Ahmed Ajram, again, his eyes open like, these guys, I was under the impression that these guys were going to maybe bring some funds so we can fix the road, fix the river, fix the bridge. Now they're telling us that why is help coming? He asked me, are they gonna not bring anything? Are they gonna stop this? I said, we'll talk. So those are so from the perspective of people here, the initial impression and reaction that, great, we have someone from Canada coming to help us. Now, when the actual facts come out, people are now worried that this newspaper actually did not come to help us. They were coming after someone that is helping us, and that's
Yeah,
not good.
yeah. So here's my 2 cents is that they were trying to come up with more Sam Marais background, right? They were trying to figure out like to paint well, this is kind of me giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe I shouldn't, but whatever. Like it sounds to me like they wanted to find out as much as they could about the guy, but I can't understand. First of all, they haven't actually reported about their trip to Lebanon. So, which again is one of those things where it's like, well, if you went there for background and you talked to locals and they gave you answers to your question, it sounds like they didn't report on it because it didn't fit the narrative that they have that like, this guy's supposed to be a villain or corrupt or allegedly or on all that stuff. So they found positive people saying positive things about him. So they just scrapped the reporting. And this is what I'm talking about. When I was growing up and we were being taught journalism in J school, like we would be told by professors like sometimes you're going to have to swallow your pride and sometimes your hunches aren't going to be correct, but if you're reporting on a subject and there's good there and bad there. Now I'm not talking about rapists and murderers and things like that where like he helped an old lady cross the street once. That's probably not very compelling or in the public interest. But if you're talking about a businessman who's where there's various reports that maybe he's got his government connects are a little cozy, whatever you want to call it. If you make the trip to Lebanon to go and find out more about this individual, you report whatever you're being told. You don't scrap it if it doesn't fit your editorial. And so this is why I'm like, when you look under the hood or behind the curtain in journalism, especially in investigative reports, like these are the kind of things that people don't really understand. So if all your reporting is slanted in one direction because you're not feeding your audience, it's actually insulting to the Globe and Mail's audience because if you're not giving them a full 360 idea of the subject that you're reporting on, then you're actually doing your readers a disservice because you're not giving them the full picture. So it does sound like they were on a fishing expedition. I'll give you an example actually, Nadim, because about 5 years ago, um, I got to be careful here because I'm sworn to secrecy. But the Globe and Mail is welcome to sue me if they want to lose their office because they know it's true. There was a story that was that was hanging over a very famous Canadian media tycoon. Let's just put it that way. It was like the sword of Damocles over his head for like a year. And it was one of those Me Too stories. And what a Globe reporter told me after they had left the Globe is that what they ended up doing in the digital age, especially during and after the Me Too era, was that they would pick famous names and go fishing. They didn't get news tips. They didn't have people come forward and file a report or make statements. They would just find powerful people and be like, let's see if there's anything in that guy's closet. Let's see if there's any skeletons in this guy's closet. So it sounds like that they're employing those kinds of tactics in this particular thing because it is very fishy that they didn't report about their trip to Lebanon. We have shrinking budgets, especially in investigative reporting in legacy outlets in Canada. The fact that they would go to the great expense to actually fly a reporter, hire a translator, bring a photographer to a small village in Lebanon to get background on a story in Canada, but then not report their findings. This is a very odd thing to happen in 2025.
You know, there's a lot of thoughts that I have, and a lot of in my way of work and management and the way I do my work. I use a lot something called a fishbone chart. A fishbone chart is where you draw a line, you put your target at the end, and you go back and you basically identify what resulted in that outcome. But that you do that for events that have occurred. You do not do that for an event that you want to create, for an outcome that you want to. You understand what I'm saying? And I told this to Mark, and I said in my interview with Mark, I said, look, you're doing a fishbone project where you have concluded something, and you're basically trying to find all the fish bones that you want to put in there, and that by itself is actually backward, because you do not do a fishbone chart for something you assumed. You do it for something that occurred.
Yeah,
You
it's
follow me? You follow
yeah.
me? Now I can tell you more. I said, how many people have gotten contracts? Why is it only Sam Reich being put on a fishbone chart at the end? And we're assuming because his name is Hassan Reich, and that's a Muslim name. And allow me to say that because I do not sometimes believe uh, all the hype around us being good we really follow we like to ensure people are treated as people. Sometimes people are treated based on what their names are.
Yeah, everyone just assumes that because I'm Italian, I'm a really good cook, and it's so
Again,
that's
that's just the way I see it. Because the two names that came up during the conversation, guess who they are? Sam Reich, who's a Lebanese from Jibjani, and then Mickey Amiri, who's a Lebanese from the next town, Leila, who is also happened to be, uh, somehow related to my wife.
well. Listen, I'm not qualified to speak on that because I don't know. I don't want to impugn motive here, but like I hear what you're saying though. There are a lot of businessmen in Canada that are under the microscope, but also there are certain groups like I'm thinking of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, who also got really big contracts during the COVID pandemic, and no one reported on them, and they are famous for oppressing women and hiding from the police pedophilia within their communities. So, I can see your point. Like it's one of those things. Yeah,
I'll
go
tell
ahead.
you one thing, and this is something I told Mark. I said, look, if you have spent not just the Globe and Mail, and if everyone that's spending money on this story and other similar stories, uh, if that fund has been spent on investigating COVID and how business was conducted during COVID to ensure that the future events, similar events, we are doing business in a better way, we will actually be serving the community. But by not doing that, we're wasting our time, our funds, and we're going after people that actually helped others. It's just backwards. That's the way I see it. Again, because I'm a systems guy. I do not believe uh, there's anything that's perfect. Systems are imperfect. Systems always need to be continually improved. In order for that to happen, you go and focus on the system. So you find a fault in the system, something fell through the crack. You go and you fix that crack. You do
Yeah,
not go.
and like I said, like if the Globe feels that they have a legit story here, that's one thing. But if you're too afraid to not report on a story fully because it might spoil the narrative that you've constructed, then that is a totally different ball. And that is literally the definition of tabloid journalism. But we're gonna end it there. And listen, Nadim, it was a pleasure meeting you. And please tell Ahmed I say hello. And I hope and everyone else in your community. But we appreciate you joining us today on Black Ball. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Bye bye. Take care.
Okay. Yeah, like it's and I'm getting accused a little bit online about like being in the tank for MHCare Medical. It's really kind of irrelevant to me who the subject of the story is. It's what's more relevant to me is that I'm just legitimately confused as to why a let's face it, they're a historical legacy media outlet. They're not, these are not rank amateurs, but they're behaving like tabloid amateurs right now. And the selective reporting, the cherry picking, it makes me suspicious of their motives. It makes me suspicious as to what kind of operation they're running over there now. Because if they're too afraid, like, listen, if I'm doing this reporting, let's just say I'm Carrie Tate. First of all, that's another thing. Mark McKinnon hasn't written a syllable about this scandal. He's based in London. I speculated that possibly they sent him and a photographer and hired a translator. Again, these are all expenses that I'm surprised they took, but I'm assuming that he acted as a stringer for Carrie Tate and the Calgary office or whatever. But it far be it for me to give advice to other journalists, but if you go to Lebanon to get background on the subject of your stories that you've been publishing for months, and you have and the angle of the story is the idea that MHCare Medical is somehow receiving favoritism or being protected by Danielle Smith's government or whatever, is giving away hockey tickets inappropriately, whatever the story is. Go ahead, report your story. But if you go, you take the trouble of going to Lebanon to get further background about the subject of your story, and when the feedback is positive, you just spike it. There's something going on, and it's not worthy of a legacy outlet like the Globe and Mail. At least I didn't think it was. So listen, we're gonna have more on this story that's not being reported by people like Nathan Pike and Carrie Tate and the Globe and Mail. And we're gonna try to see now that they've given you one side. And I'm not giving you the other side. I am just, my job now is going to be, listen, if you're not going to report parts of this story that seem important, that don't fill your narrative, I'll do that for you. And they can thank me later. So we'll see you next time on Black Bolt.
Black Bolt. Black Bolt. Black Bolt. Black Bolt.